Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Astrology and Beyond. I am Tatiana. I'm also broadcasting for ANN Archetypal News Network. Today, I'm going to speak about something that is very present for me in particular, but also for the world at large, which is the Mars Pluto opposition that has been began to take place, and it's going to be very active until May of 2025. And the reason for me to be posting this video right now is to give us a little bit of context from within what that could look like for you and give you a little bit of information as of what the world might be experiencing through this very intense uh, transit. Now, for anybody having any natal Pluto, Mars planets in their chart, this might be also speaking very loudly to you. And then I would recommend to sit with this information um, and see how that resonates with you and what you can do, because anything that is expressed, that is non-expressed or repressed in our psyche tends to somehow be expressed either through intense suffering or through illness, or if it's really radically expressed but not understood, then it can become very destructive out in the world. Now, the reason I'm saying all this is because what we see in the world is this like threat of the war, war, aggression, violence. It's all the themes of Pluto and Mars. And I'm not one to look at the news and the media too much, so I cannot give you like a specifics of what's going on out there. But what I can do is give you specifics of what's going on in here, because anything we resolve inside of us is helping our whole world resolve. And this is why it's really important to understand these things at this time. So the and I'm going to start with a little bit of what Mars and Pluto mean together as an archetype. Then I'll give you a little bit of an experience I had last night in a dream, because in dream images, things might actually pop up. And if we're able to resolve them within our being, then they don't need to express out in the world as actual physical, or destructive things, which I think is the fundamental work that we're doing here, working with archetypes. And that's why the very valuable work of Stan Groff and Rick Tarnas has been like invaluable to the contribution to this understanding of these forces related to the astrological influences and so on and so forth. And then obviously people like Ren Butler, who is my own mentor, who I deeply appreciate, having also uh, kept going on with this very deep legacy that I think is going to be pivotal in the years to come for us as humanity to purge a lot of the shadow from our genetic material and our memory. And also, of course, the work of Richard Rudd with the Gene Keys, again, very deep work that touches on the same thing, that all the information that we have is imprints in our DNA are just imprinted and from birth or pre-birth, and that those experiences of the birth or the pregnancy through birth, and how those experiences are linked also to other memories of other existences, or even the lineage or the ancestors. So this is how we heal the world, is by going inside very deeply to look at those places in our own psyche. This is why dreams are really important, because it's almost like our psyche is trying to resolve things in the dream time. So pay attention to your dreams as well. So what I'm doing is I literally exposing a little bit of my own inner experience. So hopefully, if you resonate with this, you can also go into your own personal experience and facing your own shadows and your own fears, because this is essentially what we're dealing with, especially in a world that right now, in the external world, is wanting to create, or not even create, to express more and more fear, and then more fear creates more fear, and violence, aggression, fear, and all these Plutonian themes that are going to be heightened at this time until May of 2025, so that we can understand how to move through that with peace. And this is the main theme of what I'm doing. So, the Mars Pluto archetype. This is intense willpower and courage at its best and highest frequency. Obviously, that's its expression. Drive and passion. This is the primal force to do and create anything. This is what creates actual birth. This determined efforts towards renewal and regeneration and volcanic catharsis. So this, as it at its highest frequency, really evokes the feeling of all creation, which has to go through this primal force. Like birth is an expression of a primal force creating matter. So this is how big this kind of energy is. Um, Now, when this is not properly integrated in the psyche, then there could be tendencies toward brute force and ruthlessness, overextension and pushing too hard, vulgar or coarse sexuality. This is when we see the themes of aberration that we can see in the world, like torture, uh, rape, everything that we see in the world that we are maybe repulsed or by, or even shocked by. It's just some response to very, very deep-seated, again, old information in our genetic material. So in the context of the archetypal matrices from Stan Grof, and this is something I'm people that watch this channel, the Archetypal News Network channel, are probably very familiar with. But if you're not familiar with, I'll give you a little kind of a basic surface understanding of what a perinatal matrix is. Um, it's basically the stages um, that the fetus experiences before being born. And in simple terms, when the baby is in the womb at the first stages of gestation, it's in this nice amniotic fluid just floating in it, and just in this ocean of still consciousness, not being of the earth and incarnation, and not being in as in completely in the ethers either. There's this kind of in between, and this is why this BPM1 or perinatal matrix 1 is associated to Neptune, because it's like the fields of consciousness where we're not yet into full form or incarnation, but it's still connected to the all that is. And the mother hosting the baby and her emotions and her feelings, they're all in this electromagnetic uh entanglements where the baby or the fetus doesn't know individuation, doesn't know that it is an actual separate being. It's just still part of the everything. That's number one. Number two, when the contractions begin and the baby's about to be born, there is suddenly this feeling of tension, but there's no exit because the cervix has not yet completely opened. So there's no exit for the baby. So if you can imagine you being the baby and being like squeezed like this and can't go out, then that starts creating this feelings of contraction, repression, and feelings that there's no way out. And this is was often associated with Saturn, the structure, Saturn, the confinement, Saturn, the challenge. This is why in the psyche, Saturn has this like bad reputation of being a difficult planet, but it's kind of correlated to this aspect of the birth process. Um, and these are the correlations that Rick Tarnas kind of did in conjunction with Stan Grof's work. So this is why it's very fascinating to just see it from a very grounded perspective, I would say. Now that's BPM 2, and then the perinatal matrix 3, or the third stage, it's when the baby finally, the cervix is open and the baby starts getting out. So you can imagine what happens there for in a birth. If you're a mother, you probably know, um, you probably have felt this into some degree, or not. I'm not a mother, so I cannot really say, but I can just imagine. But if you're a baby passing through a very small hole that you have to put all your body through and is being ripped, and there's blood and there's all kinds of fluids and things, and there's almost this unknown from a nice cozy space that was so enveloping to this struggle for the life that is no longer in the womb to something else that will be completely different. This is why Pluto is associated with the BPM3, or the perinatal matrix 3, which is this rebirth, the death rebirth struggle, which is like, it's just kind of going through this process, and it's very, very, let's say, violent for a baby, or it could, no? Especially if there has been an umbilical cord around the neck, or some kind of other complication. These kinds of people who have had a very difficult birth could have a lot of this anxiety producing material that then later on in life comes out in during these kind of Plutonic transits, or Pluto and Mars, um, where it's really the themes of sexuality, of raw force are all and the same. And I will expand a little bit on this perinatal matrix 3, because this is what we're going to be talking about, mostly about what things come up during these Pluto transits, and how they can express in the world, and how we can do something about it so we are at peace. I'm going to read from Oh Goddess, another fantastic book by Ren Butler, where he really breaks it down in a very simple manner. But I'm gonna just read a little bit so you understand more deeply what this means. So Groff's third perinatal matrix, referred to as the death rebirth struggle, has many elements which center on a confrontation with suffering, aging, and dying, as well as the struggle to be born and reborn. Biologically, the cervix is now dilated and the slow propulsion down the birth canal begins. The fetus undergoes an enormous struggle for survival as its frail head is wedged into the narrow pelvic opening by powerful uterine contractions. There may also be prolonged suffocation. The oxygen supply to the fetus is supplied by blood vessels winding through the uterine walls and then into the umbilical cord. During each contraction, this supply is cut or diminished, and the fetus experiences this as suffocation, which arouses an enormous aggressive response. Groff writes that if someone took a dog or cat and tried to shove it through a narrow tube, there would be a powerful biological fury unleashed. The fetus has a similar reaction. Just saying. Yet there is no way it can fight back, scream, or leave the situation. And these aggressive energies are then fed back into the musculature and cells of its body for later discharge. So this is kind of some basic understanding of how this process can have enormous repressed impotence, almost like the baby, it's not much they can do. They cannot leave, they cannot and yet the intense anxiety or fear that could be produced but in this very young being's experience could be like tremendous. So this is why these things get locked somewhere in our cells, in our cellular memory, in our DNA, and later on in life and through life they get expressed. And we see in our world they get mostly expressed through the interrelational dynamics of power dynamics, the struggle for survival, the survival of the fittest, I kill you, I get something. You did this to me, I'll do that to you. There are the confrontations, and this is why, and the nature of why we have wars and horror and perversion and sexual aggression and trafficking and pornography and all of that stuff comes with just these repressed psychic themes. So, uh, in dream time, the dream images and themes that can come with this, it's very interesting because I did have a dream last night, and I'm going myself through a Pluto square to my natal Mars right now, while Pluto is in an opposition to Mars in the sky. So for me, it's very, very relevant. But this is exactly an example of how you can use astrology to understand what things can be more relevant for you at this time. For me, this is relevant now, but I'm sharing this because this might be relevant for a lot of people in the world, and because this deals with the most probably destructive forces that we can imagine. This combination of Pluto and Mars can be extremely destructive, but they can also be extremely constructive. And this is why this sets up the stage for the next level, which is liberation, which is linked to the prenatal matrix 4, when the baby has exited and finally is free from all this suffering. It's free. The baby is now an individual and is correlated to the planet Uranus. And this is why when we talk about Uranus, we talk about individuation. And individuation means that the child has now separated from the mother and now is free to explore its own on its own, basically, even though until the age of 7 the child is still psychically part of the mother and the environment. This first individuation process occurs when the umbilical cord is cut and the being is freed up from its previous suffering, um, into a new life. And this is correlated with like expansion and, oh my God, release, right? And this is what we could experience always after periods of extreme crisis and stress and distress, is expansion and release. So this is what we can expect with these when we do this very deep work. And we can also experience that in the world if we allow these energies to flow in their highest frequency. So, dream energy, images and themes. During these transits, the Mars archetype can add energy, passion, and pointed direction to any of the themes associated with Pluto and the perinatal matrix 3. In sequences of struggle and aggression, dreamers may find themselves alternating in the roles of both victim and perpetrator. These include scenes of ruthless, sadistic violence, combat with shadowy attackers, primal warriors battling monsters, brutal slugfests and tearing things to pieces, zombie killing bloodbaths, or blowing out someone's brains. People may also dream about confronting a menacing figure and grabbing or unloading his gun. Less severe depictions include macho dudes horsing around, running rockshod, or driving willfully. Destructive elements in nature can take the form of intense avalanches. Aggressive feelings may also contain sexual elements in dreams of treacherous seduction and rape, or making someone perform oral sex on a shotgun. The demonic side of Pluto can manifest as dark and menacing characters. Themes involving scatology include slicing up a pig who is also one's father, and then seeing that it is filled with feces and wondering how anyone could eat it. Pyrocathartic elements can take the form of speeding into raging infernos. Pluto's correlation with the number 3 can manifest as 3 men in black, 3 fast cars playing a dangerous game of chicken, someone shooting a garbage can 3 times in a row, or dreamers doing wheelies on a tricycle. These are just some examples of things that come out of our psyches. So here, the experiencer, me, I'm going to share a little dream and why this dream is relevant to these BPM 3 experiences of the and the Mars Pluto. Um, and what and how dreams themselves help us release this information from my psyche. Also, because these dreams can produce a lot of real anxiety, and anxiety produces chemicals and releases cortisol, the hormone of stress, and that can in turn create extreme discomfort, and it could even lead to illness. So the important take from this is to work through these energies to literally help the world. And we do it at an individual level. That's why I don't look at the news. I don't know what's happening out there. Out there is not inside my consciousness. In here is my consciousness, and that's what I do. So I have been having these dreams for over like a long period of time, not only because Mars and Pluto are right now in the sky in contact, but because Pluto has been transiting my natal Mars. So I've been having dreams of exactly all that for a while already. Scenes of persecution, not feeling safe, military people running after me, people killing me. I've had dreams of people shooting, literally shooting at me, and I'm dying. Uh, and I die in the dream, which is very interesting. Uh, uh, Being chased, demonic scenes. I've seen demons quite a bit during these times in my dreams, and really powerful demons coming towards me. And it's very scary. And that is all in the realm of thoughts, or the what we would also call the dimensions of the astral realms as well, are the collective thought forms. And we just plug into them. So it can be very anxiety producing, lots of nightmares. And so what to do about it after the dreaming? I'll tell you that later when I tell you the dream I had last night and why it was so different from just the anxiety producing nightmare or dark night of the soul kind of feelings. Uh, I was in a military complex, and I felt very safe in this military complex. There was um, a walled out place and some kind of little windows. And there were all these military people working on an operation. Apparently, there were some very dangerous guerrillas doing ruthless acts of killings and pillagings and rapings and all kinds of stuff. And the military people that I was with, I was kind of invited to this kind of booth or central intelligence coordination, like kind of a CIA, but they were on 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 the war field, let's say, looking out, with binoculars to see the threat coming so they could attack the threatening forces. And I was just there observing as a guest. So I was like a bystander. I'm observing this. And I'm looking out, also trying to help to see if I see any motion. At some point, some guerrillas come and there's this massive shootings and you name it. And and then there is notice that the generals or whatever, the military people have captured the three heads, the main heads of the guerrillas, which are these mercenary people that have killed and raped and pillaged. So the military have captured them and they bring them. And I'm seeing through this little window, and they have these three people. And it's interesting because it's three, the BPM 3. So it's three people, it's three leaders. They're on the ground, and the military are just kicking them with, like, the kind of like police brutality that we hear about when there's power and you can exert that power, and we see that in the world. They're kicking these mercenaries like almost as defending, saying you are like a piece of of shit, pardon my French. And they're kicking them like ruthlessly. And then this information comes that for no apparent reason, the military has decided to kill the family of the mercenaries. So this one mercenary is being told that his grandmother, who is 80 years old, has been just brutally killed, and so is the rest of his family. And almost without like no no emotion, like nothing. It's like you deserve this, you deserve this because you are evil, kind of thing. And at that moment in the dream, I'm observing this happening, and the military also like almost like proud that they killed this innocent grandmother who has nothing to do with this, with is and the innocent family. It was a family that was, let's say, in the dream, it seemed like it was just these innocent women that had not done really anything, but they were like brutally killed. And the mercenary is sobbing. It's sobbing with such grief, such suffering. And then in the dream, obviously I'm the witness of this BPM-3 playing out in extreme horror. And at the same time, I witnessed this and say, what is wrong with you people? That's what I say. Can't you see that this is also a human? Like there was no need to kill his family, like for the sake of killing. And I enter in this deep state of compassion and suffering almost for this other being, and almost like, can't you see that we're all the same, and you're doing the same to this being that this being does to you, almost like there is no end to this. There is no end if we cannot confront those parts of ourselves. And in my dream, what came really clear was that element of compassion and deep understanding of all humans. Now, in essence, and for myself, there is a gene key, which again, all gene keys are based on archetypal fields that are stored in our DNA, and all humans have all the information of all creation basically stored in our DNA. And it has been proven that our DNA actually stores information. It has been scientifically proven. Now they're trying to store actually data in DNA, because the DNA is like a quantum computer, let's say, or a storage unit of information. That's why in our DNA we can store the memories of all the universe and all humanity, because, and that's why when we talk about akashic records and things like that, it's not because it's something kind of out there. It's just frequency imprints in our DNA, and that's why we all have access to everything. And that's why when we dream and when we go in the dream state, sometimes when we are not in our rational mind and we access different parts of the brain, we can access all these archetypal fields of thought and memory that are connected to everything and the beyond, and even beyond our incarnation. So this is kind of what the Gene Key talks about. And there is a Gene Key 36, which means becoming human. And becoming human is literally understanding that we are really all this one collective embodied beings having these experiences that are very real for all of us. So I just want to read a little blurb. So nowhere does the 36th shadow wreak more destruction than in the field of human relationships. Keep in mind that the programming of this gene key is the shadow of conflict, the breakdown of communication between individuals or groups. One of the deepest human yearnings is for a perfect loving relationship. It is a yearning that has been with us since the beginning of time, and the journey towards this ultimate dream of ours begins here in the 36th shadow. The journey begins, as do so many of our myths, with the challenges of our sexuality and with the guilt that follows it. And essentially, because this is connected to all the emotional experiences and the primal force of sexual desire, and how humanity has expressed this in its shadow level or its very low level. And that's why we see so much perversion and so much havoc and then emotional drama in our lives. And then when your struggles with sexuality and emotional turbulence are finally embraced openly and honestly, a remarkable gift is born. You finally graduate as a human being. The 36th gift is the gift of humanity. And this is what human suffering is really all about. It is our suffering that connects us all together. It opens up your eyes beyond your self-obsession and forces you to evolve beyond your selfishness. To be a fully integrated human being means to begin to transform your own suffering and open your heart to life. And then beyond this, obviously, is the highest frequency, which is compassion. So in my dream, this is why I talk about myself, because I can't talk about anybody else than me. And I can talk about all what's out there, but in reality, the out there comes from me. In my dream, this was just really, really evoking the nature of this human suffering. And the reality is that when we access that true experience of being in a body, in a human vessel, we are no longer trying to escape to other worlds, or which is kind of the spiritual bypassing, which is just the desire to escape the human form. But when we embrace the human form and embrace that we are so vulnerable, and yes, we're all here struggling for survival, and, we are, and that is also, to a certain degree, is also an illusion. This is the third part of what I wanted to convey to you, is that when this heart opening, when this feeling of the other is me and me is the other really comes through, and this is through this 36 gene key in humanity, this is when we can really begin to be truly empathic and compassionate, seeing that we're not just our own little beings here trying to survive, but everybody is on the same journey. Everybody has the same feelings. And that mercenary there was having as much suffering of maybe the suffering he had inflicted into other people by killing and raping and pillaging them. So the point I'm making with this whole video is that these forces are just imprinted in us, and what we can do about it is just bring love and deep compassion to ourselves. So when anger arises, when these deep emotions that trigger anger and trigger that desire for like destruction, because that's how it can arise in our daily lives. In our dreams, it shows up like that, and it purges that energy like that. Is to remain at peace and not give in to the fear. And what I mean by that is also because a lot of this plays out by the unconsciousness of beings or humans that have not yet awakened to the understanding that all of this is just internal experiences of imprinted information. But when we wake up to understand that, then we can do something about it, which is not acted out in the world, nor repress it and pretend it's not there, because then we get ill and sick, right? Is to let these images play out, let these experiences of fear, of anger, of repressed anger explode. And this is why holotropic breath work, what we call the sessions or the Grofian sessions of deep breath work, can help release stored material in the cells. It's very, very useful for this. Doing things like anger release, and anger release can be the punching of the bag, So the energy is given an outlet that is healthy and safe. So make sure this is done within a safe environment with people that are maybe professionals or people that can help you hold the space for these repressed psychic, imprints to come up to the surface. So look for for places, people, or people that can help you in therapeutic settings to release this. For example, the pent-up anger, there's many, many techniques for releasing pent-up anger. And if you don't have anybody and you're feeling this feelings of frustration and deep anger and fear and anxiety and literally fear of survival itself, there's many things you can do by yourself as well. Like you can get make anger paintings, and anger paintings is literally when you take a crayon or something and just let grunt and just like let the energy out through your and just drawing whatever comes out with like force, so it releases the energy. That's one way to do it. Something else you can do, definitely the punching of the bag or the punching of the pillow with the guttural sounds, and try not to hurt your vocal cords, but just like letting the energy out. You can also do well, and again, without trying to not hurting your vocal cords, so I would be caution with this one, but the screaming out, the letting the energy out through the scream. So make sure you're in a place that you're really by yourself, that's not going to disturb anything or anyone, and you can do that. Sometimes I do the screaming underwater, which is the fill up the bathtub and just get your head a little bit there and then do one scream and then release, and until a lot of that material is slowly released. Um, then there is obviously the breathwork sessions, and that you can do with professionals that can hold space for you in the breathwork sessions, holotropic breathwork, which will definitely help. And then there's many other ways of doing it, but let's say these are some main ones that you can maybe access more easily and more readily. What to avoid, I would think, or I would say avoid the fear take over you. Basically, the fear of the media, the news, and your own inner anxiety that can be triggered by all that we're hearing about the war, the fighting, the this, the that, Ukraine, Russia, and the threats and the Palestine, like all of those conflicts are none other than our own internal conflicts. So instead of giving the fear to what's outside of you, um, I would say avoid the contact with so much media and so much information, because that will only amp up that. And if you have no outlet for that fear or that anxiety, that produces more of that in the field. And then it just focuses more of that energy into that being produced and actualized in our world. So what I would say at this moment is, when those fears or things get to you, deep, deep, deep breaths, deep mindful practice of the here and now, which is the here and now for probably most of you is not an immediate life-threatening situation. Obviously, if you're in an immediately threatening life situation, it's different. But for all of us rest of humans that are maybe not in a death situation, death threat situation, is to take deep, deep, deep breaths and the mindful practice of the here and now, which is not giving into the thoughts or even the emotions that are flooding too much, getting them an outlet. Once the outlet is given, take deep, deep breaths, and then we do we can do what I call the mantras, or rewiring mantras. And the rewiring mantra specifically for this Mars Pluto I have found very, very useful is, I am safe. Here and now, I am safe. Here and now, I am safe. And you're almost like talking to yourselves, talking to that inner child, to that little baby that is moving from the safe wound out into the world through that scary passage through the birth canal. And it's like talking to that part of yourself or that little baby that has that stored information, and repeat on repeat. I am safe. Hearts, hands on heart. You can also do the heart, this rubbing, which actually It's like feeding your own energy to these points where we might feel like, we need reassurance and love. Also, hands on the kidneys on the back of where your kidneys are, because that's where the primal fear is stored. So same thing, you do this in the same manner you do your heart. Take deep breaths. You say, I am safe. Here and now I am safe. You do that on the back and you say, I am safe. Here and now I am safe. And you feed those kidneys like love until the sensations of anxiety, fear that might be like getting over you, uh, start subsiding. Start subsiding. Because we just need to give our brain a different information, not the subconscious information that's again locked in the DNA. It's almost like talk again to yourselves and talk to your whole being in a language that it can also understand until the feeling is achieved, the feeling of safety, and not the paranoia of the world's out to get me and the war is coming and the impending horrors and because this is in the human psyche. Of course, imagine back when the barbarian times, someone would actually come to a village and pillage and rape and kill. And not to say that this is not current. This is also still happening in our world, by the way, in certain areas more than others, but it still happens. But back then, let's say it was a more commonplace. And all of that is still stored in our memory, in our collective human memory. So by doing these exercises, while these transits are occurring, while this Pluto-Mars in the sky is transiting, and a lot of that will be very active for some people, uh, do these things, and that's how we can start slowly, slowly uh, removing that shadow material from the collective consciousness. And that's kind of what I have for you today. It's a very different video today, but I felt extremely compelled to talk about this because this can be, and whether you believe it or not, a life changer for our world. Because when one person does that work, it impacts the fractal of all humanity. So if it's a lot of us doing it and doing it with consciousness and not with unconsciousness, which is lashing out, being repressing, lashing out, and just perpetuating the cycle of victim and aggression and victim and aggression, if we're able to exit that cycle with our awareness, one by one, by one, by one, the one that does it helps more do it and more do it, help more do it until we can elevate into that next level of consciousness, which, like I said, in the 36 gene key is really related to the all human suffering leads to the ultimate compassion. And the ultimate compassion is that we are all really one and connected in one field, and that the one over there suffering is also me. And hopefully one day, our world will cease to see the war and the conflict that it's been perpetuated on and on and on. That can indeed lead to destruction, to the ultimate destruction of our civilization, which, by the way, has happened before. So this is the time where we can shift that, get into our hearts and project or emanate out into the world more of that compassion. So this is all I have to say. This is my message for you. And if any of this resonates with you, please feel free to share and like and subscribe to Astrology and Beyond and to Archetypal News Network, and you will see more of me. And let's not forget, last but not least, I have the Black Friday deals still on for the month of November, which is 50% off any of my readings or my guidance readings. So if you want any of the gifts I have to offer for you to help you move through whatever it is that you move through life with this kind of understanding, then please feel free to message me. And I love you all. See you in the next video.